We're back with one of the writers with the Compass. That's an online subscription service focused on Knox County politics in particular. Jesse Mayshark joining us once again. And we've had a week to digest the election. Jesse, you dug a little deeper into the numbers and what they may mean and tell us about future elections. Let's start with Mayor Glenn Jacobs and his win, not as big as it was in 2018.
Yeah, it was really interesting. In 2018, Jacobs' first run, he did have a Democratic opponent, Linda Haney, who was not very well known and not very well funded. And Jacobs won 66% of the vote, huge victory. So last week, he won re-election by a relatively comfortable margin, but a much smaller one of 55% to 45% for the Democrat, Debbie Helsley. And we really looked across the county, sort of precinct by precinct, to try to understand what had happened. And what was interesting is that Jacobs' share of the vote went down in basically every precinct in the county, and in more than half of them by a factor of 10% or more. So, you know, I think this was a function of, clearly there was a lower turnout overall in this election, but that seemed to be disproportionately among Republicans who really stayed home. And Democrats seemed to be more motivated, whether it was by the local races, the local candidates. The local party has gotten itself sort of pretty organized and active in the last few years, but it seemed to really have an effect on the results.
You also noted this may be a fluke or it may be a trend. When do we find out about that?
Well, I think if you look at presidential votes in Knox County, it looks like more of a trend. If you go back to George W. Bush, John McCain, Mitt Romney, when they ran for president, every one of them got more than 60% of the vote in Knox County. Donald Trump in his two presidential runs got 58% and then down to 56% in 2020. And you could say, well, maybe that's just Trump. But Bill Lee, when he ran for governor, got 58% of the vote. Marsha Blackburn barely won her race for Senate in Knox County, just barely over 50%. So I think over time, you are seeing a diversifying of the electorate in the county. However, that's still, you know, the Democrats are still very concentrated in the city. The city is getting, within city limits, Knoxville, it's getting bluer and bluer and bluer. And kind of around the edges, some of the suburban precincts closest to the city, you're starting to see some more competitive races between Republicans and Democrats.
Jesse Mayshark with a breakdown. Thanks for the deep dive. And you can always read more at CompassKnox.com. Thanks very much, Jesse.